instead of having an enormous bucket and picking one, just generate the right quest from scratch based on,
Yeah, that could, I mean, that's a totally different paradigm though, right?
Yes,
Then
that's
you have
what
to, then you have, I mean, then your objective is to learn how to, what to generate based on your previous behavior, exactly. But this is completely, a different world.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries, but yeah, interesting idea as well. Could be next research.
I was wondering if there's a reason for it.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, let's say, is it that the tensor vector fusion algorithm browser supports players to select a different set of class if they don't like the class on this already?
Exactly. So this is, the question is about how do you sort of model if they don't like the quest, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, if they don't like the quest, they leave it, right? So then there's no recording of that, right?
No refresh buttons out there?
No. If you leave the quest, then you're not in the tensor. Then you have a zero value, so you won't get recommended anything for that. It's an implicit feedback. So okay, so let me go back. So in recommender system literature, usually talk about explicit and implicit feedback, right? So implicit feedback would be you just I observe you, and based on that I do recommendations. In that case, like zero values count, right? But if it was implicit, where I just give the feedback, right? Like in the case of movies, right? I say, I don't like that, but I like that, or I give it like 3 stars, or 2 stars, or 5 stars, then I don't consider the ones that I haven't, rated. In this case, we have implicit feedback. So if you don't like it, then it's not
Clear that you get a new set, right?
Yeah, exactly. Any more questions?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank the speaker.
And closing out the session, we'll have Corey Mathewson talking or presenting his work on improbotics, exploring the imitation game using machine intelligence in improvised theater. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay, let's give this a second and then it'll jump up on the screen. Just by show of hands, who knows what the imitation game is? Okay, and who knows what improvisation is? Okay, we're doing pretty good so far. Cool. So thanks so much for having me here. That's me on the right. I'm Corey. Piotr is watching at home on the live stream. So hey, Piotr. He couldn't be here. He's in London. This is the nature of our relationship, doing a lot of improv remotely. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this project. I was supposed to present in a situated entertainment session, but I had a conflicting talk at the exact same time on career advice that I was giving, even though I don't know much about career advice. But it was to a peer group of PhDs. So I'm happy to be presenting, and I'll talk a little bit about the machine intelligence that's running our system. So this is what improvisation kind of looks like. We have people on stage, they're coming up with scenes, doing comedy or doing drama live based on suggestions from an audience. It's a really difficult domain. It depends on a lot of spontaneity and innovation and ideas, but really it just depends on honest, immediate reactions. So yeah, there's me and Piotr kind of acting in a bunch of different shows. I think that improvisation is a really fantastic domain for artificial intelligence research because it is small, safe environments, universes that are created and destroyed in a matter of minutes, and it's based on suggestions from an audience. So it kind of puts and deploys the innovations and algorithms into kind of the hands of an audience for them to judge subjectively in the moment. So this is a field that I call artificial improvisation. It's something I've been working on for a few years as part of my PhD research here at the University of Alberta, so I'm happy to be presenting at my home institution. We have a good body of work on some of the different innovations in artificial improv, and I also presented with Marcus Zager on Director, which was an artificial director that could sort of support this artificial improv as well. So this isn't the first time a robot hits the stage. This is Leonardo da Vinci's mechanical lion from 1515, obviously not an actual photo of the actual lion. This is what robot improv used to look like in 2000, so it's come a long way in the 20 years that it's been a thing. This is just a robot with a hat on. But this is Bruce Adall, and this is like a robot storyteller doing a show. 2015, this guy named Tom Seguros did a show called Judy, or what it's like to be a robot, and he's been a wonderful supporter in this work over the duration of it. Then we sort of jumped to 2010. This is Hiroshi Ishiguro's work on this realistic robot in a show called General F, in a show that was titled Sayonara and was mostly about the human actor responding to this robotic cyborg saying goodbye. And finally, this is 2014 at CMU, a huge robot called Herb, and it almost kind of looks like that initial robot with the hat on. It's just a big clunky robot on stage. And there's something that is kind of missing in this. It's that we have a robot that we're putting into human environments. So we're either telling stories about robots, or we're using robots to tell human stories. And what I think is more interesting is using this technology to tell more human stories. So enabling artists to tell their story better, faster, more effectively, deeper, with greater understanding. So I'll tell you a little bit about the versions of the software. This is version 1, this is Piggy. So it's just a big projection of a face, named after a Pygmalion. This kind of bridged the gap. This is in 2016. This show was a total failure, but we learned a lot from the failure. So Piggy is based on Chatterbot and Pandora bots, a sort of dialogue model. It uses Google speech recognition and then outputs with just Apple speech to text-to-speech. And this is kind of where I'm imagining Piggy is landing on these uncertainty valley, which kind of makes sense. We've seen this before. Everyone kind of knows what this is? Yeah, the uncanny valley. So as you progress along it, and as something becomes more human or lifelike, it becomes like more and more interesting, engaging, and familiar until it drops off rapidly when it's a zombie or a corpse or like the disembodied ghost of your mother that's floating over your head. And then it kind of gets more normal when it's like more human. So we trained Piggy, and the first way we trained it was by adding a dialogue, box onto a website. And if you've ever interacted with people in natural language online, you know how awful they can be. So Piggy learned a lot of really terrible things, which it then used in the show, because of course it did. So Piggy quickly started using the Cornell movie dialogue database, because movie dialogue is a good way to, model improv dialogue. There are still some differences. This is version 2. This is Piotr improvising with a tiny robot called Easy Robot. It's called the Artificial Language Experiment, and it's sort of the innovation on Piggy. It uses a neural network model, and so you can see at the center there's like a brain that's made out of like meat brain and chip brain, because this is like a really attractive slide if you're a venture capitalist. And then there's all kind of layers of like speech recognition and text generation, this sort of thing. And it's modular. You can tell from this diagram that it's modular. And this testable subsystem allows us to innovate on each of the subsystems. So we use Alex, and if you're curious about the tech details of Alex, it's trained on open subtitles. So open subtitles is a wonderful corpus of pretty much subtitles of every movie that's ever been made in every language. So if you're curious about any kind of dialogue or movie-based research, open subtitles is fantastic. It's coded in Torch, which is almost all but extinct at this point. It uses topic vectors, which is kind of like suggestions in improv of themes to keep it aligned. And then it takes in input lines and outputs lines, like a sequence-to-sequence text model. So that looks like this. The network architecture is long short-term memory. It's 4 layers deep, and we use glove word embeddings. So the input vocabulary, it kind of maps over 250,000 words, which is more than the number of usable English words that we use day to day, and the output vocabulary is 50,000 words. So it can generate new lines that aren't in the data set, and it does it word by word by maximizing likelihood of those lines being similar to the input data. And we're conditioning it on the topic. So that topic helps the output lines all stay oriented according to the suggestion, which is cued at the beginning of the scene. So this is kind of where I'm imagining that audience, like it's all of a sudden cute and adorable because it's humans on stage with little tiny robots. So then we wanted to play in the middle, and that's just what Improbotics is. Improbotics is now in 3 cities, so it's here in Edmonton, it's in Stockholm, Sweden, and it's in London. And it's a show that kind of lands there because what we're doing is putting cyborgs, puppets, and free will humans on stage together. So this means that all the humans on stage are wearing headphones. Some of them are being told what to say by Alex. Some of them are being told what to say by other humans. And some of them aren't being told what to say, and they can choose what to say on their own. So those are the cyborgs, the puppets, and the free will humans. This is what the controllers look like, and oftentimes we have these people sitting on stage, so the audience can actually see the controllers. They're not hidden in the imitation game that would be totally hidden. But the audience is still tasked with this kind of notion of them trying to figure out who is who's the cyborg, who's the puppet, and who's the free will. This is the controller interface, so if you're a controller, you type in the last line in black, and then Alex will output lines, and this is actually from our system. So you type in something like, I love you, and the system would respond with some of these appropriate responses given the lines that came before and the topic thus far. Then a human controller would then choose the next one to say. That choosing is important because that timing is something that's critical in improv comedy. They get to choose when the player says the thing. This is kind of what the show looks like. This is an actual photo from the show. If you were sitting in an audience like really close to this actor, and this is from a show in Stockholm, Sweden. So how do we test this system? One of the ways that we test this is through surveys of the performers and the audience. So we ask these questions to the performers, and we ask the same questions to the audience, where we replace you with the performers. And these are the kind of questions that are developed for virtual reality experiences, and there isn't a lot of interactive theater survey questions that we found. So this is sort of a useful subset that tests these 5 factors. Well, I can talk more about those questions, but I'll keep progressing now. So we did 3 improv shows, one in Stockholm, one in London, one in Edmonton. And we compared it with a show that was happening in Toronto called Yes Android, which was simply one single controller just kind of pushing lines up to one person on the stage with a visual interface. The details are in the paper about these, but there's a ton of details in there, but I want to point out that these are the kind of results that are exciting. One of the things that we saw is that the audience seems to think that the performers have more control or possibility than the performers do. So when you constrain performers, they actually are perceived as more able, more free-willed. But the audience it sort of says, yeah, they can do anything. The performers then say, we couldn't do anything, we had tech in our ears. Anyway, so this is what Yes Android is all about. It's a wonderful show in Toronto if you're over there. And another thing that we found really interesting is that there's big differences between the lines that the cyborgs are saying, that the puppets are saying, and that the free will humans are saying. And those differences are like linguistic differences. This would be interesting quantities to see as totally equal, because it would mean that it's immediately differentiable. But what this means is as soon as the cyborg starts talking, we kind of know who the cyborg is because they start talking more like a robot than someone who's being controlled by a human. So we test the number of syllables per word, the words per sentence, the difficult words that are used. Oftentimes humans don't want other humans to have to say difficult words, or the speech synthesis in the ear is something they don't trust, so they use shorter, more clear words. We also test the sentiment, and we see that like anything that involves a human is generally more positive. This follows a real natural rule of improvisation, that positivity is key, and that you're always accepting and expanding the other people. This isn't something that we see in the scripts or the soundwork. And we also see that there's like grammatical errors, and this is due to the nature of the improv. If you are that puppeteer, then you are feverishly typing in what the person is supposed to say next. So unless your typing is really good, you're going to be making a lot of these errors. Some of the feedback that we got it falls into a few different themes, but 2 that I'll talk about is 1, the system can't tell complete stories. So right now, we know how difficult it is for these systems to generate complete stories. We're not aiming to make a robot that goes on stage and tells a total story. we're aiming to enable humans to tell bigger, brighter stories. The second is that it forces you to be a better improviser. So this is fantastic feedback coming from really talented, really practiced professionals in the art form, because they are being challenged by these systems to step up their game and break their own patterns, to start to incorporate this, what would be construed as a novice improviser who's just saying something random about the clouds, and incorporate that into the show. So the three areas that are going to be progressing this research forward are, one, the timing, how we reduce the latencies, because that's immediately obvious, who's the cyber, who's the puppet, who's the pre-rotating. We're going to play a little bit with the deception in terms of what the audience knows and what they don't know, and also continue that consistency. And consistency is something that the director work that me and Marcus were working on. How do we keep the system consistent along the entire progression of the scene? And this work isn't possible without a ton of effort from a whole bunch of people and a lot of fantastic volunteers in the art world. So I really appreciate all their help. If you're interested, there's a blog post about this at corymatthewson.com/improbotics. And if chatbot or chat systems are of interest to you, then you can check out Jan, which is just approximate nearest neighbor, which is a really, really effective input-output chat modality. And it's something you can have spinning on your computer like quickly if you just want a simple chat interface and you've got a good data set of chat. Hit me up on Twitter for more questions or for continued investigation. I like to talk that this project came about because I wrote about all the ways that it failed, and then Pierre reached out to me. So we love when we're connected by other people and with other people who are interested in certain facets of this. With that, I'm excited about questions or comments that you might have. Thanks.
I think maybe I missed something. Where did the script option come from?
The script option?
Yeah, when you were showing things, there was the script category or whatever it was.
Yes, so this is, script is actually like the source text. I apologize. So script is actually the corpus that is generating the model that's used to train the model.
Okay.
So it's a characteristic of the data set.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Sorry.
People were not like reading scripts.
No. Though that's a really fun improv game.
Yeah. I have another question.
Yeah.
So this is really cool work. I should have said that first. Brian McGurko, who put hats on robots, is someone who I've worked with in the past. So this is definitely up that alley. What's like? Where do you want this to go? Like, where's the sort of goal, if there is one?
Yeah. The goal that I imagine is like two robots doing a show together for a room full of robots that are just like blindly throwing ones into the matrix. And then a human walks in the door and is like, ooh, that's odd. I really hope that this kind of work inspires people in the same way that like there was an acoustic guitar for a whole bunch of years, and then someone built an electric guitar, and then Jimi Hendrix started playing guitar. And like that is kind of what I imagine, that like a whole bunch of people were doing theater, and then someone was like, you could put lights on the roof and then shine them, and then people can see them better. And I think this kind of tech is in the same way inspiring for improvisers. So like we can now generate all kinds of multimedia just by perceiving what the people are saying on stage. So this is a dream I have, that I think this kind of work is progressing towards like holodeck, kind of effects.
Cool.
This is really fascinating work. I've been looking forward to this talk. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process. Like, do you start out with a concrete experience goal and you're like trying to squish the tech to make it work, or is there some like organic, like iterative thing you're doing where like things are changing over time towards getting to the point where you've got a performance that you can like put out into theaters?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the process for a lot of this work has been talk to as many improvisers as I can and be like, I'm doing a PhD in machine learning. and I love the question that happened earlier in the conference of just like, what is the thing you want? What is the thing that you're just dreaming of? Because a room full of improvisers is like, I think, the best place to hear new ideas. And so a lot of the process comes from these like riff sessions. And then, riff with them, come back, and then present them a system. And then I'll do something like, show them speech synthesis that they've never seen before, and they're like, there's no prosody in that. And it's like, yep, exactly. Like, that's exactly something you noticed, and there's a whole bunch of people in the world that are thinking about it. So the goal has often been to hit show deadlines, like the Fringe or Edinburgh. And so if we set that as a target, then we work backwards and say, okay, there needs to be this amount of engineering that goes into it. The system has to be waterproof by this date because we're not doing tech support on stage. And whatever tech you can get waterproof, then we run with that. Yeah. It's a tough one because you want to incorporate everything you can into a show, but the jankiness is not something that's appealing. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Fantastic work. So I was really excited that you said that one of the central goals that you wanted was to try and develop this technology to help people tell their own stories. So by introducing the synthetic acid that actually make improv human, I think that's a beautiful thing for theater and improv in general to do. And then you mentioned that one of the things that was happening was that you were finding that the expert improvisers were forced to step outside their comfort zones and maybe do a little bit better because it was like they were performing alongside a novice improviser because they were so constrained. And I guess I would love to hear more specifics about what it means to be a better improviser.
Yeah.
Just because I feel like that can take on different things. Like my understanding is that one of the tenets of the best improvisers are the ones who make the scene partners shine.
Yeah.
And is that what was going on? Or was it in spite of my scene partner being so constrained and speaking like a robot, I still looked good? Or I still
I made it out.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I often, when I present this work, I start off with the inspiration that I heard that the best improvisers are the ones that make other people look good. And I think that is the challenge for improvisers to this is only going to do as good as it can do, and it's up to you to make it look good. I think the challenge for me as the developer is, can I make a system that makes that person look good? So the best improv system developers are the ones that can make improvisers look good. So it is a weird, a bit of a loop, but there is that dichotomy that I want them to be playing up and being uplifted by the system, but now they're playing down and doing a little bit of justification. So a little bit of the funniness in the show comes from the fact that it's going to spit out something random, and 10% of the improviser on stage is winking to the audience, being like, "This thing, huh?" I can't get a load of it. Yeah. So on that note, I think at this point, this kind of the metaphor is it's a burning ring, and an improviser has to jump through it. But at this point, the ring is kind of broken, and the improviser can just walk around it. But there's some fun in the danger that comes with it. The innovation is definitely pushing me towards how does this system start to justify and uplift the improviser, as opposed to them just having to play the justification game. Yeah, it's very astute, and you get it from it on that. Okay.
Thank you for the talk. Fascinating work. I'm curious to know, moving forward, how would you plan? Because improv is hard to evaluate, right?
Yeah.
So especially when you have an improvisation system, working with such almost like an undefined, mushy domain.
Yeah.
How do you plan to sort of attempt evaluation?
Yeah, it's a good question. So the joke answer that I have heard or said is the robot should just be rewarded by the laughing of the audience. But then I think at that point, it would take one step towards the side of the stage and the audience would laugh, and then it would take another step, and then finally it's on the edge of the stage about to jump off, and the audience is like, "Yeah, do it, jump off, do yourself." So I don't think that's the way to evaluate it, but I think that there's a notion of audience perception that needs to come into it. So there's brilliant work by someone named Heather Knight, who was doing stand-up with a robot, and she had an audience hold up green and red cards when they liked a joke or didn't like a joke. And that gets into the tuning and online adaptation. And if you can then make an engagingness measure based on how much the audience was reacting and improving the system, then I think you can start to evaluate that interaction. In terms of actually the nice thing about the modular subsystems in my venture capital slide is that you can evaluate steps along the way. So we can test different language models that have better characteristics for language models. As in, they say the same thing, but they don't use the same words, which is, you know, a measure of paraphrasing that you kind of want in improv. There's a brilliant talk yesterday that Chris Purdy gave that is like fantastic and a step towards, you know, automated evaluation of storytelling systems, but it's based on narrative space as opposed to dialogue space. So a lot of what I think about and talk about with linguists and people in the world is like, what makes a good conversation? And I think there is an answer, and it's an answer that we talk about in improv a lot, and it's that you're building the universe incrementally, but you're not adding too much information to derail. So a conversation always starts with a little bit of information, you find some sort of level ground, and then you step in a certain direction, a little direction. And that Goldilocks range is kind of the measure that we want to find. So I think measures of entropy or information density, information revelation, these are the kind of things that are going to motivate your work going forward. How we're building or shaping the narrative and being able to measure that underlying shape. Yeah.
Thank the speaker.
Cool. Thanks.
All right, that was the last paper session of the day. I think Jillian and John are going to come and talk to us about the end of the conference.
Okay, this is the end of AIIDE. So John and I don't have that many closing remarks. I put together a few statistics that I thought might be interesting for us to reflect on and think about moving forward, about who we all are, right? So just a quick overview, numbers that were sort of already known. In the main program itself, we had 19 oral presentations, 18 posters, 3 demos, 5 private experiences, 5 doctoral consortium papers, and a part training poetry. And we also had the Startup AI competition, for which I did not compile statistics, but I believe Dave has some survey data about where people are coming from there as well. We are from 40 different institutions among the authors, from 8 countries, spanning 3 continents, and 32% of the contributions in this top 5 are from multi-institution contributions. And so multiple places, including several that are industry, academic collaborations as well, which is really exciting to see. It's not AI without charts. So this is a chart that's just trying to show, although the text is surprisingly small on that projected, how countries are represented at AIIDE based on the institution having a contribution, right? So if there's 4 people from one institution, that counts as 1 because it's one institution. But if it's a paper for multiple institutions, then those institutions double count. So by that metric, 65% of our papers are coming from the United States, 10% from the UK, 6% from Brazil, 7% from Canada, 2% from the Czech Republic, 1% from Sweden, 6% from Germany, and 3% from Iceland. If we remove the number of contributions and just look at institution diversity, these numbers shift a little bit where the US doesn't look quite as well represented. But clearly many papers are still coming from the US at this conference. But it's been really exciting to see, and something that I've noticed coming into this, that Brazil, hi. We're very excited to have you here. There's 4 different institutions in Brazil being represented. The UK is very well represented, and then significant portions of Western Europe, for the most part, being represented as well. So this is good. Hopefully next year we'll see even more diversity among our contributors. The last thing that I have to say is just a quick reminder. We have this generous offer from Unity, who are one of our sponsors, that if you want your Unity-based research tools to appear on the Unity page, You can find out more about what that would entail by sending an email to ai.research@unity3d.com. And I'm going to pass it over to John. Before I do that, I want to say John has been like the best general chair ever. Don't let him tell you anything otherwise. And I'm really very grateful to him for having not only run the conference really well, but left me in a place where I feel like hopefully I can not totally screw this thing up next year. So thank you very much to John.
So I'll keep my remarks really brief. I just want to say some final thanks. It takes a village to put on a conference like this. We have a great team of people on the organizing committee who've been really working in the course of the past year to make this event possible. So I just want to thank one last time Jillian, the Dean, Stephen Ware, Josh McCoy, Ben Samuel, Alex Zook, Jichen Zhu, Chris Martins, Justice Robertson, Rogelio Carmona Rivera, Dave Churchill, Richard Kelly, Arnaud Jahala, Joe Ziga for putting on this event. It's been a real privilege to work with this team. I'm just grateful to have the opportunity to work with them, so let's please give them all a round of applause too. And of course, I'd like to thank our student volunteers who've been helping keep things running smoothly while we've been on site. Josh Sirota, Everton Schumacher-Soares, and Robert McGillivray. I'd like to thank the University of Alberta for hosting us here, and conference services and tech support for keeping things running relatively smoothly, and sometimes warm, and sometimes warm. But it's been awesome to be here at the university. It's been wonderful to be able to bring AIIDE here for the first time outside the United States. So thanks very much to the University of Alberta. I'd like to thank the program committee for all their work in reviewing papers and discussion and really making the technical program possible. So thank you to the program committee, and again, thank you to Carol Hamilton and Nick Abed at AAAI for all their hard work behind the scenes. And last, I would also like to once again thank our sponsors, which made it possible to bring a number of students from the Doctoral Consortium and Playable Experience Program and parts of the main track to be able to be here, and also providing support for all the conference activities that have been going on over the course of this week. So thank you to Sony Interactive Entertainment, to Unity, to Disney Research, to BioWare, and Western Economic Diversification Canada. So thank you again. Let's give a round of applause for our sponsors. One brief announcement. I can say I was just on the Slack channel with Jichen Zhu, our workshops chair. So we are finalizing workshop proceedings, so they will be available shortly after the conference. AAAI is actually no longer publishing workshop proceedings as part of the conference, so those will be made available through CEUR, and they'll be free.